Namaste, everyone. Welcome to the Cārvāka podcast. Today, it's time to discuss a book. It's been a while since I've had an author to discuss a book, and I've actually not had today's guest on the podcast for a couple of years now. I last spoke to Abhinav 2 years ago on the podcast. At that time, this was not a video podcast, it was an audio-only podcast, and Abhinav was one of the first guests who had come on the podcast. And I'm extremely happy that today I'm inviting Abhinav to talk about his latest book, Predators and Prey. So, Abhinav, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Kushal. Thank you for having me. Yes, I think you invited me first on the podcast in 2017, I think. So it's closer to 3 years, I believe.
Yeah, almost 2.5 साल के ऊपर हो गए.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's get started, Abhinav. So every time I talk to someone who's written a book, first of all, I would like to start by congratulating you. I'm so happy that finally you've written a book, and let's start by actually showing everyone which book are we talking about. So I'm just going to share the Amazon page for everyone. So this is the book, guys, Predators and Prey. It is a thriller. I've already read it. It is gripping. It's amazing. And I'll share my comments about the book as we go on in the podcast. But I thought I'll start by sharing the page. This is the Amazon page, and I've kept the link for the Amazon, the link for purchasing the book, the Amazon link on the podcast description itself. So when you guys go in the description, you can go and click the link and buy the book there too. And if you are on Kindle Unlimited, you get the book anyways. So now that we've said that, so Abhinav, first of all, why did you decide to so this is a two-part question. So what was the thought process जब तुमने decide किया कि I'm going to write fiction, and that too in fiction you decided to go into a thriller genre? What was your mindset? Why did you decide to pick both the things in a particular manner?
Very good question, Kushal. So the thought of writing a book first came to me, I think, in 2017, I believe. And I was torn between two very, very different kinds of books. One was a book on the Mahabharata, since that has been an area of interest and passion for me. And I've written several articles, posts on the Mahabharata. So that was obviously one natural avenue for me to express things more in the form of a book. As I started to think about it, right, one thing that kept on coming back to me was that how could I make it somewhat different, right? There are any number of books on the Mahabharata that are already out there. So what additional insights or information would my book add? And the more I thought of it, I really could not think of a compelling way to present what I had, whatever I had written or what insights I had in the form of a book. So the other thing was that I actually started this book out, this Predators and Prey, by writing actually the very first scene that you read in the book is the very first thing that I wrote in the book when I started writing it. And the point was I wanted to see if I could write a thriller sequence, a chase sequence, the kinds that you read in an Alistair MacLean or a Frederick Forsyth for those who are a little older, but
True.
In any kind of thrillers these days, whether it is a Dan Brown or a David Baldacci, an absolutely masala thriller chase sequence where the good guy is running and the bad guys are after him. Itna sab padhne ke baad I wanted to see, can I write something like that? That was, to be honest, the genesis, the starting point of the book. And after writing that, it became, what I have written seems interesting enough, so let's see if I can make a book out of it. That there was no grand narrative behind the book or anything or any huge ambition. It was simply, let me write a proper masala thriller that I would want to read, which would be a page turner in every sense of the word. That was the only starting point for the book.
Now here's the thing. So you said you just wanted to write a thriller because, let's say, you enjoy thrillers or reading thrillers yourself, but every time we see, look, I'm also a content creator. At the end of the day, we're all content creators. So when we are creating a content, we always go through that point where we feel, yaar, now I have done something, I think this is special, or I mean, isko main pad lunga. या अगर मैं होता और किसी और ने लिखी होती तो मैं जरूर पढ़ता. I mean, many times, I mean, I also have this habit, like in my podcast, if I don't know how many other podcasters do this, but I tend to listen to my own podcasts as a listener, as somebody consuming content, because I want to improve myself in my own art form, right? I want to see how many mistakes I make when I'm speaking, how is my voice tone doing or stuff like that, or what is the flow of the podcast. So when you were writing this book, what was that moment when you were like, now I have made something that can be, taken to the next level? So did you have a particular moment, or it was a culmination where धीरे 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 बढ़ता गया?
Yes and no. In a very frustrating sort of answer, if I may give yes and no. Uh, the yes part came much later. And mind you, I had never written a short story before. I had never written fiction before. This was my first attempt at writing fiction, and that too, it ended up being a 360-page book. So I made, I think, every single mistake that a new author makes, and I think I made some more original mistakes of my own also. It was later on, as I was writing through, I was writing and I was also coming up with the plot outline at the same time, in the sense that, say, for example, if I'd written about 50 pages when I was at the 50-page mark, I had an outline that took me to probably 150 pages or so. And at one point when I was writing the outline, and when the plot and the twists came to me, at that point I said, this is a story that I have to write. This is the plot that I have to write, and I have to write it in a way that does justice to it. Kabhi kabad, once in a blue moon, when one gets that spark of imagination and creativity, you want to make the most of it. And that was the point where I said, this is something that I want to make sure I do justice to. And as you said, if anyone else had written it, I would want to read it, and I would want to keep turning the page. That was the part that came later. When I started writing out, I think I started out with a burst of self-indulgence. So I thought that imagine if you imagine if a best-selling author is writing his fifth book, 10th book. So people will read it. They will know what to expect from the book, and they will bear with the author, even if the pace is a little, if it flags a little bit, if the opening is. That's what I started writing out initially, and I sent it to a couple of people. One person gave me feedback which was precise, blunt, and very heartbreaking. I think, if I remember in a few words, it was, sorry, but it is not grabbing my attention. So after that, I closed my draft, and I just sat in depression for 2 weeks. I think after that, I said, I thought I was writing a masterpiece, but this feedback from a person whose opinion I value and trust it's not grabbing my attention. So after a couple of weeks of moping and sulking and being depressed, when I started to think about it, I said, well, I'm not writing a book for myself. I'm writing a book that others will want to read. And what he said was right. It was not grabbing anyone's attention. That, so what if the action picks up after the 30th, 40th page and it becomes gripping? Why should anyone want to spend to read about 40 pages will take about an hour or thereabouts. So why should anyone spend 1 hour of their time reading an unknown author's book? And the answer was no, hardly anyone. I wouldn't. The way we often, when we go to a bookstore, right, and we pick up and we leaf through the pages of a book we have not heard about, what do? We'll open the book, we'll see the first page, we'll read maybe a page or two, and if it doesn't grip our attention, we'll put it back on the bookshelf. That's not what I wanted my book to be picked up and then put back on a shelf. So that was the initial part, and then obviously the feedback really helped. And then when I had the plot, that twist in the plot, the conspiracy angle and everything, I said, this is something I have to turn into a proper book and do justice to it.
All right, now that you've mentioned the plot, so obviously, the book is about, data theft at the NSA, and then you have a scientist on the run, and then you have, 3 countries, multiple characters, back and forth. But you know what? I don't want to I mean, in my view, and this is what I was telling you offline too, that when it comes to a thriller, that conducting a podcast on a scholarly book is very easy. You just have to pick parts. Like when I did a podcast with Meenakshi Jain, it was a walk in the park for me. I just had to pick the moments of books कि अच्छा ये factoid बता दीजिए आपके book में, ये factoid बता दीजिए आपके book में. But with a thriller, I was like यार अगर मैंने ये बता दिया फिर यार वो तो प्लॉट खुल जाएगा. प्लॉट खुल गया तो फिर लोग पढ़ेंगे क्यों. तो मैं सोच रहा था कि इसके बारे में क्या डिस्कस करेंगे. देन आई वाज लाइक लेट अस ट्राई टू क्रिएट अ न्यू काइंड ऑफ अ पॉडकास्ट, एंड दैट्स व्हाई आई टोल्ड यू. So I obviously see, when I was reading the book, I could see what you're trying to do through the book. Not only are you trying to entertain people, because obviously the primary motto of the book is creating an entertainment book where आप जब पढ़ रहे हो, your group, you like when the page finishes, अरे यार आगे क्या होने वाला है, what's gonna happen next, क्या होगा इसके साथ, what's gonna happen with Deva, or what's gonna happen with the other characters, or what's gonna happen with X, Y, Z, that kind of a thing. And the thing is, but what I noticed, obviously, it is there in many parts of the book, but especially in the epilogue. And when I was telling you offline that the epilogue, you have written certain dialogues, and you have written, I would say they are. It is a commentary. I would use the word. It is a commentary on our societal realities, also in a very, very unique way, if you ask me. Ki, so my question to you, the first question would be that when an author decides to write a book, and obviously that fine mixture between, I don't want to sound very preachy कि भाई मैं तुमको किताब के द्वारा प्रवचन नहीं देना चाहता हूं, मैं तुम्हें entertain करना चाहता हूं, but still I still want to give you a message about what happens in our society at the end of the day. And when you pick up the story, and when you read the story, and when you see what happens to the different characters in the story, without revealing that, you would, and you then relate to the societal reality कि यार हाँ यार अपने समाज में तो ये होता है, हमारा देश तो ऐसा ही है, ये तो होता ही है, सरकार तो ऐसी ही है, ये बंदा तो ऐसे ही है, बाजू वाला तो ऐसे ही है, फलाना देश तो ऐसे ही है. So because तुम्हारी स्टोरी में अमेरिका भी इन्वॉल्व है, पाकिस्तानी इंटेलिजेंस आईएसआई भी इन्वॉल्व है, इंडियन obviously ये भी involved है, and there is a technological angle too. So that's also something that, because it's obviously about technology and a lot to do with the dark side, and some things related to technology also. And obviously you're from a tech background too, so I think it would have been easier for you to write. But my question is that how did you decide to create that mixture कि इससे ज्यादा मुझे सोशल मैसेज डालना नहीं है और a level of entertainment रखना है. So how did you figure that out?
I think so. Very, very, good comment, Kushal, that there is an element of a societal commentary also in the book, and more so towards the end in the epilogue. The only guiding principle was that, as you said, I didn't want at any part in the book, at any point in the book, for it to sound like a bhashan. कि प्रवचन हो रहा है, someone is giving a sermon. I didn't want that to be the case. Whatever the message was, I thought it is going to be more effective, and it is going to be more palatable if it is presented within the book itself. Let people come up and draw their own conclusions. And to that end, because I come from a technology background, it was relatively easier for me to research some of the things that I talked about. So almost, I think every single point in the book about technology, about surveillance that I mention is it has either already happened or it is technically possible. So there is no element of the speed of light, someone traveling faster than the speed of light kind of equivalences nahi hai book mein. So therefore, it is all within the realms of possibility. And as far as the social commentary goes, I think just the events of today, the news item today about lower court passing the order that it did, I think it only reinforces the sense of frustration that we all have, that the system doesn't work, or at least it doesn't seem to work for the common man. So how could I put that without getting into a preachy kind of a voice? And that is a part that really, I think, happened during the editing phase of the book. After I had written the book, and as I was waiting for and to find a publisher, during that time, I would look at, I would open up the manuscript, I would go through it, I would make edits, redraft, I would rewrite certain things, and so on.
So here's the thing. Now let us get into the technology aspect of things. So you have mentioned different facets of technology and what what are the downsides, what are the good sides, what what kind of breakages and leakages happen because and will can be stopped because of technology, can happen because of technology and stuff like that. Now as someone who's actually basically in tech, you are from a tech background. Now a person from a tech background, where where do you think we so I mean I actually don't know, so I wanted to know your opinion also when it comes to at a personal level. Are you in the doomsday camp of technology, or are you in the bullish camp like the Steven Pinker where AI is not harmful, or the Neil deGrasse Tyson? I just wanted to know where you stand personally, or you are in the Elon Musk variety where हाय मर गए, AI आ गई है, हमारा क्या होने वाला है हमारे साथ. So I just wanted to know, I was curious, so where do you stand in that segment?
So from my Twitter timeline, you will know, Kushal, I am a pessimist, I am a cynic. Okay, there is not a single bone of positivity in me at times, I feel. So it is no, I'm more in I'm more in the dystopian side of the spectrum when it comes to this. And we don't realize this to a great extent, but technology is already influencing how we live. Some in good ways, obviously. Some in good ways. It would be really childish to criticize technology in every aspect of it, but also we have to be aware that it is influencing our lives in ways which, if someone were to present to us in the ways that it does, we would not believe it. We would say there's no way this can happen. To give you just one example, 5 years ago, uh, there was a there was a doll that was launched at the world's biggest toy exposition for manufacturers of children's toys. It was called Hello Barbie, and
Hmm.
Hello Barbie was a doll that had a chip inside it which could listen to voices. It could differentiate and recognize different voices. So
Hmm.
if a child spoke, if a parent spoke and all that, it could recognize those different voices. It could upload conversations to the cloud, and it could provide personalized answers. So like your home assistants that you see today, whether it is from Apple, Amazon, Google, or what have you, it was somewhat similar to that, but tailored and geared towards children. And
Yeah.
that toy attracted so much criticism from the media. In fact, some called it the snitch Barbie, someone called it the Stasi Barbie, spying Barbie. Children's advocates, they all were up in arms against it. This was just 5 years back. It was called
Hmm.
creepy. Five
Yeah.
years now, those kinds of capabilities have become mainstream. So many homes, tens of millions of homes in the US, for example, have one or the other personal digital home assistant where you can tell it to play a song, set a reminder, do some
Hmm.
shopping or what have you,
Hmm.
and it is listening all the time. It is
Hmm.
listening all the time. It is uploading conversations to the cloud where unknown strange people are listening in those conversations, and we are okay with it. I mean, would you be okay? I don't think so. Would I be okay? Definitely not. If someone said we will send a person who will sit in your house all the time, in your bedroom, in your living room, in your kitchen, in your dining room, he will listen to everything you say, he will take notes of everything you say, you tell him to do something, he will do that, and then he will go and tell 500 other people what happened in your house.
Hmm.
I don't think any of us would want that. Yet it is happening today.
But then my counter to that is, because it is prevailing to your book that at the end of the day, I mean, what was that, Murphy's law है या वो Moore's law है, कौन सा Moore's law है जो टेक्नोलॉजी की स्पीड के बारे में
Correct.
बात कर,
Moore's law.
Moore's law, right? So according to the Moore's law, what is that? Technology basically is going to keep on improving and expanding and expanding and improving at a certain rate beyond a point where we'll reach singularity. So being a godless heathen that I am, eventually, somewhere down the line, I feel that if singularity is what we are going to achieve, then might as well have fun on the way. So what would you say to people like me?
Uh, so one is the Jeffrey Moore's law, as he postulated it. Basically, if I remember correctly, says that the price performance curve basically doubles every 18 months or so.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
whether it is through price or whether it is through the increase in the number of transistors in a microchip that increases the
Yeah.
processing capability, it doubles every 18 months, and it
Hmm.
held true for almost 30 or 40 years. So you can imagine if you keep on doubling everything 1.5 years, so what will happen? So today you
Hmm.
have microprocessors that have got more than 1 billion transistors in it.
Yeah.
So the kinds of things you can do are becoming possible that even 10 years ago you could even dream of. So coming to the singularity point, I don't think at least I don't have an issue with the capabilities of technology. What we have to realize is the inherent bias that exists in technology, whether
Hmm.
it is machine learning, whether it is AI, or what have you. And the
Hmm.
biases are not because of technology. The biases are because there are humans that program AI,
Yeah.
and humans program AI with their own biases that they bring to the table.
True.
Now, the question is, do we know, are we aware of what biases are built into those programs, firstly? And
Hmm.
secondly, what are those biases, you know, biasing against and for?
Yeah.
Who controls that?
Hmm.
Who decides that? And India is not creating any meaningful AI or software products of its own. We are a consumer of technology built outside India, whether
Hmm.
it is American or whether now it is Chinese products, software and hardware.
Hmm.
We are essentially have become a data colony.
Yeah.
So
Especially with China and Huawei.
China, Huawei, and parts of that I touch upon in the book.
That's why I mentioned it. That's why I mentioned it.
Exactly. So, I mean, my that's my concern. That see, technology is not neutral because technology is built by, it is improved by humans, and humans have their biases, whether conscious or otherwise. And
Hmm.
if we don't control that aspect of technology, someone else will. No one is going to come and say that the Indians are such nice people, so let us make sure we don't discriminate against them. Where there is a motive of profit, either monetary or economic or geopolitical, the
Hmm.
person with control of the technology is going to exercise that in their favor. No one
Hmm.
owes India anything. Either
Yeah.
we do
True.
it or so.
So here's the thing. Now there was I forget the exact line. I forgot to mark it in the books. I should have done it. You have made a very subtle comment about about America, or yeah, they are Americans, वो तो अपने हिसाब से करेंगे, kind of a thing. Americans eventually at the end of the day, when shit hits the roof kind of a scenario, the Americans are going to save their own back, and it's not like you can't rely on them on everything. And I like the subtle jibe on America. Matlab, it was not like Abhinav had spared the Americans too in in the book. So here's my angle. Now I want to connect this because a lot of our life today is social media governed. And you were just mentioning the aspect where there are basically objects are listening to you. It's like I have a Samsung phone, and I have an Android app, and basically I know the damn thing is listening to me all the time. I'll give you an example without taking the name of the person. Somebody had once told me that they were going through a divorce, and they were in the process, and they were writing some emails with their potential lawyers, and their Facebook पेज में एड्स पॉपअप शुरू हो जाती है ऑफ पोटेंशियल डिवोर्स लॉयर्स, और बोला यार यार तो मतलब ये लोग तो सब पढ़ रहे हैं. So but then the question is, what the hell do we do about it? So how do we insulate ourselves? Like Huawei, I mean, you have obviously insinuated and given jabs about Huawei in the entire phone. Like the Americans have basically banned Huawei. The Google Play Store does not allow any updates or any installations of apps through the Play Store on Huawei and stuff like that. But now I want to connect it to the epilogue of the book, where you do talk about stuff like a weak state that we have in India. I mean, I want to read a particular part from the epilogue, because then people will get why I'm raising this. So basically, in the epilogue, तुमने कहा है कि yes, these people are worse than common criminals, but these are people who have been in senior positions at institutions for years: armed forces, bureaucracy, judiciary, and political office. If we arrest them, entire institutions will be destroyed. People will lose faith. फिर उसके बाद you say, then what, sir? If the institution is rotten, it should be raised and built afresh. Deva was indignant. How many institutions has our nation built since independence that people have faith in, Deva? Name one. Forget building institutions. Name even one institution that our political class have not destroyed. Now, this is my point. Now, let us take technology and security, and let us take data protection as a subject in India, right? Data protection, data privacy. अभी सुप्रीम कोर्ट में केस गया, सबको मालूम है, वो डेटा प्राइवेसी के ऊपर पूरा तमाशा हुआ. What the hell was that? I mean, you have dinosaurs creating policies in India about data protection and technology intrusion. So where are we heading? And obviously, at the end of the day, I don't want to become a winchbag beyond a point. But then, as a technologist yourself, and as someone who's tried to kind of indicate what is happening in this country and in our institutions, where do you think we solve this technological glitch?
See, fundamentally, I don't know, because I don't know how our government works. I don't know how the institutions of our government work, because they work in a manner that defies all logic. You wouldn't expect rational institutions to behave the way our institutions behave, frankly. I mean, we have collected biometric information on 1.2 billion people in this country without having a data privacy law. I mean, that is how bizarre it is. And
True.
we stored those biometric details and data on a database that was developed through funding by the CIA. I mean, that is the level of I mean, I'll use I'll sanitize my words. That is the level of genius that exists in our country, and people defend that kind of behavior. So be that as it may, I think first of all we need competent people in government, right? In all branches of government, it is not enough to have one or two good ministers and one or two good bureaucrats. I think we need to Indian bureaucracy has to get people from lateral placements, or call it what you will, and it has to give them the space to operate in a manner that fits their competence and experience and expertise. Unfortunately, like any established group that does not want to let in any competition, the Indian bureaucracy also protects its own class, which is why you rarely hear of competent people from different, whether it is the sciences or technology or any other field, coming into government and making a difference. So the first part has to be, you have to bring in competent people. I mean, it is bizarre to think that a bureaucrat with no experience in technology will know better in matters of technology and policy than someone who has spent 30 years in the field of technology. It is, I'd like to hear the rational justification for that, other than the fact that we don't want the competition.
True. Now, let us get into the next phase. Now, this is something I'm going to try for the first time. So now let us get into the specifics of the book. So I'm going to break it down in two parts. So my first question to you, before I request you to read some excerpts from the book, is, so there are obviously multiple characters in a fiction book. Which were your favorite characters? Give me your first two favorite characters. I know it's very hard. I know it's very hard, but बिकॉज तुम बोलोगे मुझे कि यार मैंने सब क्रिएट किए हैं तो मुझे तो सब अच्छे लगेंगे, मगर ऐसे हो नहीं सकता है। सब अच्छों में कुछ तो अच्छे होते हैं जो ज्यादा अच्छे लगते हैं। सो विच वाज योर फेवरेट कैरेक्टर when you were writing, or who you
You
thought?
So, Kushal, you should have given me advance warning on that because I honestly don't know which is my favorite character. Uh, so, God, see, okay. Uh, Ironically enough, even one of the most repulsive characters in my book is someone that I liked writing about because it is the guy is such a repulsive creep that it was an interesting exercise to make him so repulsive without being in your face, right? You don't want to use words. I don't think I've ever used a word that he was a repulsive character, right? But it is how through your through his actions, through dialogue, you bring that to the fore. So even those, but if I had to pick two or three characters, definitely this guy, Jaswant Singh Rathore, who plays the role of the National Security Advisor of India. His was a character I liked writing. He does not occupy a lot of space in the book, but definitely I liked writing about him. And the other one was the female character, Ria. She was an interesting character because parts of the plot move because and through her. So she is not so much as the initiator of the action as much as the cause for it. And at one point in the book, I think I even write, so Deva, who's the main protagonist in the book, he looks at her and says, "There is something about you and trouble, isn't it?"
Yeah.
So that was another interesting character. And one thought that struck me was that I I describe her, or at least she comes across as an incredibly beautiful girl. Okay, stereotypical, beautiful, perfect, and all that. So on the other hand, a wicked thought struck me that because she's so perfect in that sense, incredibly bad things have to happen to her. I'm sorry to say this, but that was my thinking in part.
So basically इतना अच्छा नहीं मैं कर सकता हूँ रिया के लिए, उसकी बैंड बजा दो.
Eloquently put, Kushal. Absolutely.
So here's the thing, when you started by talking about the repulsive character, now here's the thing, I want to delve into the psychology of that. So how does one, because by our inherent nature, we're all decent human beings, we're good people, and when we talk about evil thoughts, those are not thoughts that naturally come to us. Those are not thoughts that are our inner core. So I just wanted to understand the process when you were writing those things. Like, how does one go through it? Like, is it that I would really be repulsed if there was a person like this, or this is something that people might find repulsive? So what was the way? I'm just fascinated by that, because the way you were saying it, I was like, how does one go about thinking about what is repulsive, or how would that person will be repulsive, find us
Uh,
repulsive?
so understand one thing, Kushal, that even the worst of people, they don't go walking all day long thinking that I'm a bad person, I'm an evil person, मैं इतना बुरा आदमी हूँ, मैं दुष्ट हूँ and all. I don't think anyone does that, right? They all go about saying maybe things like I am what I am and I'm doing what I am and I'm successful, and therefore people will obviously find. So there are justifications for everything. Firstly, no one goes around walking with that guilt hat worn over their heads that I'm an evil person. So bottom line was that. The second is that people become repulsive through what they do. You cannot make a person evil simply by making him say, I'm a powerful man and I'm a bad person, I'm the villain of this book, so hate me. It has to be through what they do. And there are, so that was one part. The other part was that where is the voice of the character? The voice, the personality of the character has to come out. It should not all be, minor variations of the same person. So if I talk like myself, every character will end up sounding roughly the same, which makes for a very boring character. So therefore, I think this part, layering the personality of each character, I think really came in the latter parts of writing when I was writing the book, where once the book had reached its complete stage in some form or the manner, and I was reading through it and editing it, that was when I felt that yes, this character's personality has to come to the fore. So he has to use words that I probably never would. He has to do things that I definitely would not. And he has to act in a certain way that I would not. So I'm not talking and writing about myself. I'm talking and describing another character. People have to be able to, when they hear him speak, they have to really feel that this is this person speaking. This is not Abhinav, the author, who's थोड़ा font बढ़ा दिया and color change कर दिया. No, this is that person speaking. And
Got it.
and the bottom line was, if a person says bad things, if a person says and does bad things, it is not a reflection on me.
Hmm.
So that was very important, that to make that distinction.
Now let's do this. So usually, a lot of people, we like, it's a typical podcast. लोग बोलेंगे हाँ हाँ मुझे ये part अच्छा लगा था book में, मुझे ये part अच्छा लगा था मैं. I don't want to do that. So I want you to now pick certain parts from the book that you enjoyed, and I will request you to read those certain. I mean, I'm not saying elaborate on that, but pick certain aspects of the book or certain areas of the book where you had enjoyed it, and I want you to read them, because obviously तुम्हारी आवाज मुझसे तो बहुत अच्छी है.
I wouldn't say that, but thank you, Kushal. So I'll give people a slight background before I get into that, right?
Sure.
So among the characters in the book, on the good side is this person, Jaswant Singh Rathore, or JSR, as I abbreviate his name to. He's a national security advisor, and he's a man of immense power, as you can imagine. And on the other side is Neeraj Kumar Mishra, who is a media baron who runs a very powerful media conglomerate. And he's not beyond using that media power and influence for his own benefit and so on. And at one point, this guy, the NSA Rathore, gets involved with the Neeraj and decides that he's going to put an end to this person's doings. And Neeraj then somehow manages a conversation with a meeting with the Rathore to try and come work out a compromise, or Sam Dam Dand Bhed jo hota hai, to figure out how to get JSR to back down. And so when this conversation happens, that is what I'm going to read, and I'm just searching for that exact passage. So give me just 1 minute. I thought I had that page, but okay, got it. So this is so JSR tells Neeraj that you have to stop, otherwise it's not going to end very well for you. And you wanted this meeting, so tell me. I had someone meet you and communicate my terms and conditions. So have you decided to accept them or not? And Neeraj has no intentions of accepting them, so he tries to play around, and then he decides to use what I call shock and awe. So he starts off with a monologue, and this is what I'm going to read. Rathore Saab, Neeraj started. We all know Panchatantra stories. Since you have shared a story, allow me to share a page from the annals of history. This is Lutyens, this is Delhi, the capital of dynasties for 1,000 years. Kings have sat on the throne and reigned, but rarely ruled. The real ruler behind the imperial throne has been the Delhi Darbar. Even today, while the Prime Minister reigns, it is the Delhi Darbar that rules this country. People like me, who you think of as the parasites, the brokers, the middlemen, are the Delhi Darbar. We were there when the Khiljis took over from the slaves. It was someone like us who invited Babur to overthrow Ibrahim Lodi. We were the ones that betrayed Bhagat Singh to the gallows and built Lutyens as a reward brick by brick. Every such brick in Lutyens today will tell you a tale, Rathor Saab, if you care to ask or listen. It is the tale of the invincibility and immortality of the Darbar. Dynasties have been born and dynasties have died here. Invaders have come and gone. Prime ministers have come and prime ministers have moved on. We, on the other hand, Sirji, have been the only constant in this land for 1,000 years. As long as there exists a nation to rule, we will be here to decide who the ruler is. You touch me, and it is your king, the prime minister, who will fall. Even he knows this, which is why he will never allow you to act against us. I am surprised that you, a supposedly wise man, does not know this. Your name, power, and existence will be ground to dust and swirl around the shoes of men like us before being forgotten forever. Neeraj paused, shock and awe. Despite himself, JSR felt a cold chill run through him at Neeraj's words. So this is the first part where Neeraj delivers his monologue, basically saying, "I will do what I have to do. You can't touch me." And the second part concludes this way. So, "I fear you overestimate your abilities, but do not confuse me for a single person. I and others like me are the Raktbij against whom no Durga, no Kali exists. There are no gods in Kalyug Rathor Saab, only people like me, more powerful than any god you pray to. I am a man of patience, but do not test its limits." Neeraj concluded his message in a monotone, in a neutral voice that carried not a trace of emotion. For all the bombast Neeraj had thrown in, JSR recognized a kernel of truth hidden under that bravado. Neeraj was but a face that changed shape at will, that stood for the brutal truth about longevity and survival and power in Delhi. JSR's mind churned through the verse from the Gita, "Karmanye vadhika raste ma phaleshu kadachana, ma karma phal heturbhur mate sangostava karmani." He had the right to action, not to the fruits of action. He could not be stilled into inaction because of fear of failure or death. He looked at Neeraj. The decision made, he saw no reason to prevaricate. "Neeraj, since you refuse to bend, I will break you and crush you like I would a cockroach. I will hang your crushed, battered carcass at the gates of Red Fort as an example for the rest of your Delhi Darbar. So horrible that none will dare to step in your shoes for 100 years. I gave you a choice, you have spurned it. We will not meet a second time, nor will you get a second chance," JSR said, and walked out of the room, convinced that Neeraj possessed the guile of a Shakuni, the insatiable lust for power of a Duryodhan, and the degeneracy of a Dushasan. Despite the bombast, slivers of doubt knifed through him. So, this was a passage I particularly liked writing and editing.
This was a passage जितने भी लोग ट्विटर पे होते हैं वो सबसे ज़्यादा enjoy करेंगे because these two passages basically touch a certain nerve with the audiences online, and this kind of sums up these two passages basically sum up the political reality of India, if you ask me. So on the one hand is what our common friend and someone we both know, Rahul Roshan, calls the establishment. The establishment is someone, I'll tell you once, I can't take the name of the officer, but a few years ago when I was doing some work in villages, and and I saw the attitude of the officer when I was trying to work in the village for the village upliftment, and through the officer I could see, यार तू किसी पॉलिटिशियन के यहाँ से आया है तो क्या हो गया, हम ब्यूरोक्रेट हैं, पॉलिटिशियन तो आते जाते रहते हैं, हम यहीं पे हैं, रिटायरमेंट तक हम यहीं पे बैठे रहने वाले हैं. And that these two paragraphs that you have read, these two paragraphs actually explain the reality of India. There are good sides to the bureaucracy, like any subject or any institution, and there are bad sides to it. But yes, the kind of inertia we experience in our bureaucracy in this country, and that's why I said, I think your epilogue in the book, that epilogue where I think there was another line on the Shaurya Chakra, if I remember. Yes, where you say, "This is the reality of our nation, Deva. Thieves prosper while the honest die paupers. Look at Himang. It is certain that he will be awarded a Shaurya Chakra. There are some who are already demanding that he be given the Shaurya Chakra. And then you go ahead and say, and this does not make your blood boil, sir. My blood is too precious to boil at the impotence of our leaders. I pick the battles worth fighting for, and where I know I can win, Deva, and so should you. I think this picking the right battles is such a beautiful line जो तुमने आखिर में लिखी है. I mean, it touches such a chord, and it touched such a chord with me that, and when I talk to kids online or through my monologues, sometimes I try and, a lot of kids, they talk to me. And just yesterday on another podcast, which I do with Sham, I was talking about something I call the digital bloodlust. And, people are obsessed with this, yeah, jhagda karna, all the time, jhagda karna. Beyond the point, I think, we have to realize that we should pick our battles. Every day, if you battle under this, recreational outrage, to use the words of Joe Rogan, he uses this word a lot of times. He says Twitter and Facebook and Instagram are avenues where people do recreational outrage. And when you start outraging for recreation, you end up between, in that scenario of the crying wolf kind of a scenario where people beyond a point, then politicians don't take you seriously. They'll be like, idhar to log roz rote hain.
Exactly.
तो असली रोना कब है हमें पता ही नहीं चलेगा. So that line, when you said, KR, learn to pick your battles, I think that is such a beautiful lesson for young kids who can pick this up and read this and understand कि boss, being strategic in life, when you pick your battles, when it comes to socio-political issues, is so important. So I really wanted to commend you on that. That's why I kept that portion for the latter half कि मुझे ये line पढ़नी थी, because it touched a deep chord with me. And, hats off to you that you wrote it in such a beautiful way.
No, thank you, Kushal. It is a lesson that I'm guilty of, to use, what is the Shakespearean phrase that it is a lesson that is observed more that is practiced more in the breach than the observance. Thanks to Yes Minister, I think I learned that line. I am as guilty of, I think, the youngsters or anyone else of recreational outrage on Twitter. Thankfully, I don't go much on Facebook. Otherwise, I'm sure I would be doing the same on Facebook. And to your point, I think it's such a dichotomy, right? That Twitter has proven so useful in so many different ways for me. I've got to know so many good, nice people, you included, thanks to Twitter. But it is also a fact that I have, outraged pointlessly, needlessly, wasted time on Twitter. So it is which is what makes it so frustrating, right? If it were all bad, it would have been very easy to leave and go off Twitter, for example, a long time back. But because it also provides utility, it makes it so difficult to find the balance between deriving value from it and not having it waste time.
True. So I just wanted to take one question from the live chat. So somebody has asked, here is a question to Abhi. What made you write about politics? So answer kar do.
You can't write a thriller that is set in India and not touch upon politics, firstly. I'm sure, one could write a murder mystery, a bank robbery or something, but I don't know much about robbing banks. I know more about technology. And see, politics is not front and center in this book. There are no politicians in this book. I don't name any politician. There is a passage or two where the Prime Minister is a character in the book, but I take care not to describe the Prime Minister physically, nor name him, nor the political party, because that is irrelevant to the book. I'm not writing a manifesto for a particular party. But for the technology, for the plot that the book has about, yes, politics had to be a part of it.
True.
Maybe in the second book, actually, which the sequel to this, the second part of the Deva series, in the next few weeks or the next couple of months, when I start thinking and start writing about it, I know for sure that politics will play a bigger role in it. So if you didn't get enough of it in the first one, then yeah, maybe in the second one.
So good. I was just about to ask you what kind of a project are you going to look up for next? So good. Now, so we're going to have a sequel to the book. That is very good. So before we wrap things up, there is one more paragraph that you end the book with. It is not the exact last paragraph, but I would say it is kind of the last part. But I wanted to read it because, again, it says a lot about our neighbors. It is the last paragraph where you say, Akhtar Rana has been promoted to Major General and now is the Deputy Director General in charge of the external wing at the ISI. Akhtar Rana was the ISI colonel in charge of recruiting and training terrorists in POK and coordinating their infiltration into Kashmir as part of his job with the Joint Intelligence North Division. He's the man you went hunting for into Pakistan and spent months trying to identify, locate, and kill. So, yes, Deva, you have my permission to go to Pakistan, but only after you have prepared for it. Yes, sir, Deva spoke quietly, deliberately. Ab to zarur jana padega. I have to go now. For Abha, for closure. So I think that also sums up हमारे neighbors. Or you have, in a very subtle and a very nice way, basically कहते हैं ना कि हाँ क्या पाकिस्तान में हो रहा है, क्या कंफ्यूजन है, वो सोसाइटी कितनी कंफ्यूज्ड है, वो मतलब इटर्नल आइडेंटिटी क्राइसिस से सफरिंग सोसाइटी है कि भाई मैं कौन हूँ, मेरा नाम अरब है मगर मैं तो दिखता तो वो बाजू वाला है जिससे मैं नफरत करता हूँ उसके जैसा हूँ. So there are a lot of things that are there, and it is the nature of the beast. So I've already taken a lot of your time. So before we wrap things up, I just wanted to ask you one last thing, that if there was one thing that a reader would take away beyond the social messaging. So good. I was just going to ask you, and someone in the live chat is also. So what is the main message you want your readers to take from your book? Good. That's what I wanted the last message, that last question to be. So good. Someone from the live chat has asked that question too.
No, see, the primary message from the book, or for people who read the book, I would say two messages they should or they can take away. One is that technology is already shaping, influencing, and changing our lives without us knowing it. And the book is a dramatized illustration of the challenges that technology poses in front of us. That is one. The second takeaway should be, and I really, really hope people do that, and based on the initial feedback reviews, that it is possible to write a gripping thriller, page turner, without making it very melodramatic. So my intent was also that write a page thriller that is a page thriller in every sense of the word, कि ऐसी book पढ़ने में मजा आए. And that is, sorry, that's a bit of a shameless plug for my own book, but that was the second intent. That write something that doesn't flag, the pace doesn't flag. You don't feel that the book is going off in a tangent, or there are filler passages simply because there is not enough of a plot and all of that. And for that, I have to thank all the 20 publishers. I stopped counting after 20. All the 20 plus publishers that rejected my book, because that gave me time to work on the book and keep improving it.
Cool. I think that's amazing that you're so open about how many publishers also you had to go through in the entire process of getting the book done. But these are my last comments before we wrap things up. When I was reading the book, I'm actually not a fiction reader. I mean, most of I tend to read philosophy and science most of the times, or religion. I don't know. Other than that, I don't read anything. But I actually enjoyed reading this. And here's my takeaway. When I was reading this book, see, I'm someone who's deeply involved into the moral, ethical angle of things in general. Even if somebody follows me on Twitter, you'll notice I'm always looking at the moral, ethical angle of any subject. I am just looking at it purely from a philosophical, moral, ethical, epistemological point of view. And when I was reading this book, what I took away was that this is such a beautiful and a subtle commentary. While it is not preachy, I repeat, this book is not at all preachy. It is entertaining, but while it is entertaining, it is such a beautiful, subtle message about our social realities, our bureaucrats, our politics, our neighbors, some people who we think are our friends, who are actually not our friends, some people who we want us to be our friends, but they kind of are not our friends. And all these, these things were so beautifully placed in the book. And what I found was it was not overdone. Because sometimes what happens is, what I see is, you tend to see more of the author and less of the story. And I would like to commend Abhinav, because it was not about him, it was about the story. And the messages were there as if it was required in the story. And especially the epilogue, it touched me so much. And that's why I read so many excerpts from the epilogue, because it really touched me. It touched me at a core level, at a level where I was like, यार ये है हमारे देश में, ये होता है हमारे देश में, ऐसे ही है, हम लोग रोज सड़ते हैं और रोज कुड़ते हैं, और हम लोग फिर वही है, ये हमारे इंडियंस से बड़ी पॉजिटिव कॉम नहीं होगी कोई. मतलब जब वो स्पेक्टेटर इंडेक्स के सर्वेज आते हैं और पूछते हैं हैप्पी विद डेमोक्रेसी, 78% इंडियंस आर हैप्पी विद डेमोक्रेसी, व्हिच इज अमेजिंग. कुड़ते हैं मगर हैप्पी विद डेमोक्रेसी भी रहते हैं. So I think it is quintessential of our people. So once again, Abhinav, I really want to congratulate and thank you for writing this book. And to everyone who's going to be watching this later or listening to it on the audio podcast, I would like to say, I had pointed out in the start that the link to purchase the book, I have shared the link in the description of the podcast. So when you listen to this podcast now, or you're going to be listening to it later on the audio or the video version, just go in the description, click the link, buy the book. And if you have any questions later on, once you've bought the book, please give a review. बुक का रिव्यू लिखना, Amazon से खरीद रहे हो Amazon में लिखना, फ्लिपकार्ट में ले रहे हो फ्लिपकार्ट में लिखना, जिधर से भी ले रहे हो उधर से रिव्यू लिखना बुक का. And if you have any questions, you can contact me over here. I can pass the questions on to Abhinav. Abhinav will be more than happy to answer those questions. If you are direct on Twitter or there, then I have left Abhinav's Twitter handle in the description of the podcast. You can follow Abhinav on Twitter. You can directly ask all the questions to Abhinav on Twitter. So Abhinav, once again, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Kushal, for having me, and thank you for all the nice comments and feedback that you have about the book. And I'm so glad that the book as well as the message resonated with you. And again, thanks for the plug also. So guys, on this podcast, for a new author, you have to buy the book. You have to share in your network news about the book. If you like it, leave a review. As I say, praise in public, criticize in private. So if you have any criticism, please send me a note in private. But if you like the book, please tell everyone. That's the only way that people will hear about a book by a first-time author. So thank you again, Kushal, for having me on your podcast.
All right, guys. So it's time to wrap things up. But before we wrap things up, I would like to remind you and request you that please subscribe to the podcast, like the videos, share it if you like what I'm doing. If I'm already on Patreon. If you're watching it live right now, or you're going to be watching it on YouTube later, you see the link of Patreon on the ticker right now at the bottom of the screen. If you are listening to the audio, you know how to go. It's www.patreon.com/Cārvāka. It is Cārvāka for Cārvāka. And on Patreon, as you know, we are discussing books over there. This Sunday, day after tomorrow, we're going to start the third book of our discussion, which is Shrikant Telegiri's Genetics and the Aryan Debate. As of now on Patreon, we are doing a deep dive into the Aryan invasion, the pro and the anti side. This is the third book. So please subscribe on Patreon. You can support me there. And on that note, I would like to say namaste, goodbye, good night. See you next time. Take care.